What's up everyone, Boylon here, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. In this video we are going to go over my picks for top 10 underrated characters. This is going to be a bit different from a typical top 10 best characters or best free-to-play characters. I'm going to go over my picks for the characters that I think are a bit underappreciated at times and maybe even overlooked, but are quite good and useful in their own right. Many of these have also helped me out with a variety of content, including campaign missions and challenges, but also are decently well-rounded for other aspects of the game. Not all of these characters that I personally have leveled and geared up, but likely are ones that I will do soon, or maybe Red Stars Willing would recommend others to take a look at them. So we're going to start off the list off at number 10, and that pick is going to be the Hulk in the 10th position. Some people might think I'm a bit crazy to include him here, and while I agree he isn't the best character in the game, even though he should be, there are a few things that I believe deserve a second look. If any of you have done a lot of blitzing at the 8.3 level, then maybe you've run into a really high-powered Hulk and thought it would be an easy run but ended up smashed by his leap. Especially when he's got offense up from his passive and low HP for some good damage multipliers. Once you knock this guy down below 50%, things can quickly get out of hand with his damage given the right power level. If you're someone who was very lucky to get some really good red stars, maybe 5 red stars or higher Hulk, and thought it was garbage, well, I'd maybe consider taking him up. I mean, who knows, he might pull you off a surprise win in Alliance War Defense or elsewhere, and here's also hoping that he gets some love in the near future, alongside some other Avengers who also sorely really need it. Also kind of unfortunate that this Wave 1 Avengers tag didn't really go very far, other than he gets one counter for being paired with another OG Avenger, which probably Cap might be the only other person that and Hawkeye, I guess, would probably be the only ones that he'd be paired up with these days. But the Hulk is going to be the first on the list for underrated characters. And coming in at number 9, we have Sentry. And this minion, who is part of arguably the worst minion faction next to Ravagers, has a bit of a higher calling than the rest of his minion brethren. Sentry actually used to be one of the more OP characters back in the day due to his ability Smoke Bomb, which basically applied evade and stealth to most of the team. Lately though, you might see him frequently on a team with Ultron playing Hide the Robot game, but Sentry does have some other uses, including being usable in the Mystic campaign chapters, also one of the best characters to use for the Hand Catalyst Flash event. And hopefully the Hand faction will get a rework at some point, given that there really only is them and the Ravagers left to do. And when the time comes, I'll have a pretty decent Sentry to use for that. If you're looking for a decent support character with a sort of tanky aspect to them, then Sentry definitely is your man. And next we have number 8, and that spot for me goes to Merc Lieutenant. And this is actually the last minion on the list, and it was a bit of a toss-up for me between him and Merc Riotguard, who recently got reworked as part of the Taskmaster update, but I feel that Merc Lieutenant has more functionality overall than his tanking counterpart. Basically, every part of Merc Lieutenant's kit is pretty awesome, including the ability generation on his basic, the buffs that gets thrown around on his special, and the speed up and offense up really are some of the best buffs in the game, and it's on a super short cooldown of 2 at rank 6. He even has the ability to heal, albeit a bit of a lower chance on his passive, but it does function better with other mercenaries. I have used this guy in the past with other teams, including other tech teams, alongside characters like Vision for the spawn defense up. Not that I would recommend the two together at this point, since power armor exists. I've also used him with Crossbones, Yondu, and other characters with turn 2 alts. He can pre-buff them before some really heavy damage by them. But nowadays you're really going to see them paired up with Taskmaster and the Mercs. But if you're an early or mid-game player, he can really help you do some extra damage when paired with some good DPS types. So if you're looking for another support type that can really help you do some additional damage, then Merc Lieutenant is your guy. And moving on to number 7 is going to be Mystique. And I know what everyone is thinking, but hear me out here. She typically slots into either the OG Brotherhood team or the new Marauders team with Sinister. Her kit is actually quite nice, and I think that when I get some more mutant gear, I'll probably raise her up a little bit more. I really like her basic attack that copies buffs from the enemies and gives it to her. And it's a multi-hit attack, so it's really good at knocking through any death proofs or evades that the enemy might have. Mystique's ult can be a real game changer sometimes, when she gets an enemy team member to attack the one that you have targeted. And if this is one of their big hitters, this can sometimes one-shot someone. And while maybe not as good as the rest of her kit, Mystique's special is still quite handy, in that it kicks people out of stealth, and if you're paired with Sinister, it can even flip positive buffs to negatives. So that can be a pretty big deal sometimes. When I'm running my Marauders team, I find that it's actually usually Mystique that makes the biggest difference on the team. Usually ends up doing some of the most damage and survives quite a bit, surprisingly. Definitely not someone to sleep on if you're building up any of the two Brotherhood teams or Marauders. Coming in at number 6, we have our favorite villain, Wakandan, and that's going to be Eric Killmonger. I've recently had a larger appreciation for him as not only the heavy damage dealer for the Wakandan team, but also for the new Merc Taskmaster team. Especially with the revelation just not too long ago that Taskmaster gets more damage with skill allies instead of enemies, which is part of this kit. Personally, I'm not a fan of the full Wakandan team because of how trashy I think Okoye and M'Baku are. But Killmonger, on the other hand, really can carry the damage. And first of all, his passive when used alongside characters like Shuri or Merc Riotguard can trigger additional attack hits when he gets defense up. He also gets a decent amount of drain, which if he's built up high enough, that can really suck up a lot of extra HP from the damage he's outputting. He synergizes quite well with the new mercenary team because of his extra crits, and a lot of his kit revolves around having critical hits and doing additional damage through that. He seems to really snowball at times when you get him to a higher power level due to his drain and critical hits. Definitely one to build up for either a Wakandan team or the new really powerful Merc Taskmaster team. And if you're looking for a heavy hitter, villain, blaster, mercenary, then look no further than Killmonger. So now that's 5 out of the way. Now we're going to start getting through the maybe slightly more obvious ones, but also characters that people don't always bring up for one reason or another. And the first one on this list is number 5, and that's going to be the Human Torch. The first thing you guys are probably thinking is, well, duh, he's the blaster of the Fantastic Four. And yes he is. But he does have a fair amount of value coming from his stats. And a lot of this is due to how fast he is. He boasts a very high speed of about 127, once it stops here, which for the most part outspeeds a good chunk of the Marvel Strike Force cast, and really is only beaten by a few, including Black Widow, Yo-Yo, Gamora, and is even tied with Captain Marvel. For this reason, he actually runs quite well in arena offense in some of those early heavy hitter builds, which usually include characters like Captain Marvel, Loki, and if you pair Human Torch in there, it can be a lot of turn 1 damage. And it's really easy to knock out the characters out of the park early on with his special, which actually does a significant chunk of damage, especially since he gets offense up from that. Aside from this, he can also be used in the Catalyst of Change challenge to progress further for those ABCs and those elusive orange Catalyst gear pieces. On the downside, like many blasters, he is quite squishy, so the more gold and red stars you can get will help his survivability a lot. Although he can shake off some negative stats effects with his passive, he's an all-around good character, and if you're looking for some firepower... Okay, moving on from the too obvious joke now. And next on the list at number 4 is Carnage. A new thought of mine I have had recently after leveling up Symbiote Spider-Man these days and realized how much more I want to gear and power him up. When Carnage first came out, he really wasn't all that special despite having a very similar kit. Spider-Verse was just kind of meh overall, I would say, and didn't really have a place at the time. And it was meant to be a shield killer, except for they weren't really even all that good at that either. And then Coulson came along and really crushed that dream. But lately he's found his place with the new tweaks and changes to the symbiote tag, coupled with Symbiote Spider-Man and Venom. They're a bit of a 3-man wrecking crew. Carnage really shines all over, but where I think his focus lies is his new ability to feed speed bar into the other symbiotes when enemies are dropped below 25% health. This can really snowball when you're fighting summons or killing Gregs over and over during a battle with Hela and the other Asgardians. Carnage can also spread debuffs quite well on his basic, And as long as they don't have counterattack, which can be a bit of a pain, then this is a great way to spread existing debuffs around the field, or even line up for characters like Symbiote Spider-Man or Scarlet Witch to extend those debuffs. Carnage has quite a range of game modes uses, including the Gold Rush challenge, which requires city characters to complete, and using a symbiote team can really make this pretty easy. He also is quite useful with the symbiotes in Dark Dimension, especially in the new Dark Dimension 3 city lanes, which has risen his stats a fair bit, but he can also be quite handy in other raids and war offense, facing off against other teams who can't shake off debuffs that easily. Definitely a character that I've been in the process of bringing up slowly for Dark Dimension 3, and hopefully clear the last gold challenge soon. And if you're looking for a fast brawler debuffer who takes advantage of other negative stats effects, then make sure to pick up and gear up this creepy symbiote. And now we're getting near the top of the list here. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the evil sorcerer himself, Mordo. And he made this list for me because of all the places that I've used him since he's been released. Not to mention he controls any given fight like nobody's business, with basically every one of his moves with some degree of control. Starting with his basic, which applies 1 to 2 random negative effects to the target, although really this is only of 3 total debuffs, including offense down, speed down, and defense down, so there's a good chance you'll get something good. Mordo's special Mesmerize is also a really great control move, blinding up to a total of 4 targets, slowing 2 other targets, and a 50% chance to stun the primary target, unless you invest oranges, which makes it 100%. And I know many people who have actually taken this T4 upgrade, something I might consider doing in the future. His ultimate is also a 2-turn heal block, which is really handy in fights where regeneration is an issue, especially against healing heavy teams. Also amazing to use with the full supernatural team in war offense especially. But Mordo is a character that I have used in almost every game mode except for maybe Dark Dimension. He is particularly useful in the training module and ability enhancements challenge, but also great in the Mystic campaign chapters, especially in that final Mystic 3-9 with God King Thor, which is a real pain in the ass when I first completed it, and I don't know if I would have done without him. So if you're looking for a controller that can help you out in a lot of different game modes, then Mordo is the person you need to get. And closing the gap at number 2 is my boy Falcon. This choice might vary for people's idea of underrated, but I know that there are people in my alliance who haven't bothered to raise him up because they aren't using power armor. But Falcon has a lot of uses on his own, even without the team, and really this stems from his special Red Wing, and his ability to fill the speed bar of his team by quite a huge chunk. This grows even higher for every enemy that has a positive effect on them. Depending on how many enemies are on the field, this could get as high as over 100% speed bar, since there can be up to 10 enemies on the field at one time. Overall, his damage isn't too bad either as a blaster, and he has a bit of a higher than average durability with his passive that grants him some extra block chance, even by himself. Outside of the power armor team, in war offense, I have also used Falcon a lot in the Orb Fragments challenge to get more red star fragments, and also the Catalyst of Change challenge, which requires additional blasters, and this helps you get more ABCs and orange gear as well. I'm not actually sure if I could have beaten those challenges without him, largely due to his special and how much turn bar that really gives to everyone else. He also has some value with the Tech Wing team for Ultima 7, but I'm not sure how popular that build still is, which usually contains other tech characters such as Ultron, Shuri, Scientist Supreme, Minerva, and sometimes Vision. Overall, Falcon's a great supporty blaster type, and if you haven't leveled this guy up, you definitely need to. And we're close to the end here in our journey of Misfits. And who gets the crown other than the god of trickery himself? Yes, that's right. Loki gets the #1 spot here. And what can I say about Loki other than he's got a surprisingly amazing kit for all sorts of different circumstances. But he is really most known for his special mind control, which can really mess up people on the enemy team, much like Mystique does with their ultimate, but a lot better, since it can get up to 2 people to beat on them, and it applies defense down for 2 turns. This is an ability I have heavily considered T4ing, but I haven't quite yet. For this reason alone, He excels in modes like arena offense and possibly defense as well, using an early burst sort of setup, such as my previous mentioned Captain Marvel and Human Torch combo. He is also usable in previous challenges, like I mentioned with Mordo. The training material and ability material challenges can make a huge difference getting through these. All around, he's a great character, and you'll need to bring him up to some degree anyways if you're going to be hunting for Black Bolt, who requires all 5 Asgardians to unlock. Asgardians are also one of the top kings of war defense still, and Loki is a key member of that team, next to Hela and Thor. If you want to trick your way to the top of Marvel's Strike Force, then look no further than Loki to help you out in a wide range of game content. He has also been another one of my considerations for possible Tier 14 for Dark Dimension 3, but I ended up blowing all my gear on Ebony Maw recently, so that's going to have to wait for a little while. And that's the end of my little countdown. I'm curious to know what you guys thought about this list, and if you're surprised at all by any of the additions, or if you didn't really think that they were underrated at all. I went through my roster and thought about the characters that aren't really necessarily their top 10 picks for must-level characters and the amount of value that they can provide to your roster and endgame progression. But, as always, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and comment down below what other characters you think I might have missed out on, or you feel are underrated yourself, and are sometimes underappreciated. And if you want to see more videos like this, then please hit that subscribe button for some more Marvel Strike Force content. And until next time, everyone, stay safe.